You start.
If art is made to awaken possibility for the audience.
If art is made to awaken possibility for the audience, then we seek to awaken possibility in every available medium. The need for oral, visual, and textual stimuli must be met by whatever means necessary. The writings of the band, as collected in Three Speaks, have proven to be effective, but not enough for the digital age. This marks the creation of a forum for musicians, writers, artists, thinkers, and all others to participate in a discussion about the issues they feel are most affecting the production of their art. Through detailed interviews and discussions, we hope to highlight the ways others are awakening possibilities, or failing to do so, as a means of further relighting excitement in our audience. But the following speaks for itself: the elite and the backward.
First established in Olympia, Washington in 2000, Ladyfest is a community-based platform showcasing and encouraging the creative and political work of self-identified women. According to lesbolicious.co.uk, the Ladyfest movement provides non-threatening, positive spaces in which women are encouraged to discuss issues, share skills, and celebrate creativity. But it also allows people to make friends, establish networks, and most importantly, place their personal experiences in a wider feminist context. Since the first Ladyfest, hundreds of Ladyfest events have been held across the world, each featuring an individual assessment of the needs of artistic, political, and feminist needs of its own community. So this is The Elite and the Backward. This is the first episode. And today we're talking to Chelsea Dunn and Kelley Kipperman, and we're going to be talking about Ladyfest. Let's start with Kelley. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. I am a last semester Division III student at Hampshire College. Currently working on composing scores based on the theory behind graphic and unconventional music notation. I'm also scoring a sort of what will end up being a radio play. It's a collaboration with a friend of mine that will be called Rabbit and Rudy, or How to Tell a Sunrise to Fuck Off. So that's coming up. That's with Karen Warren Gregory, who also is a Hampshire student. And coming back from living in Berlin, Germany for 6 months, where I did a project recording found sounds and conversations in a lot of the train and subway stations in Berlin, and then composing music over those. A bunch of those were just picked up by a Danish contemporary dance composer who is in Berlin, and they will be used at a dance festival sometime in Berlin in the coming months. So that's exciting. Yeah.
Do you know that piece by Pierre Schaeffer, the Etude on a Train Station?
Yeah.
Did that have anything to do with it?
No, actually.
Oh.
But now that you mention, maybe subconsciously, yeah.
Cool. I think that's like, it's kind of like in opera, like everybody's written an opera on the Orpheus story, because that was like the first full opera. So maybe we'll have like an electronic thing where like everybody does like a train station.
Like a train station, yeah.
Okay, so, actually another thing that I've been thinking about with you is that like, so we went to Kelley and I went to high school together.
We did. It was an interesting time, I think, for both of us.
And I remember, like, musically, you were more in this kind of like folksy, like Kimya Dawson-y world.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah.
Okay. But now you've kind of moved into more like John Cagey, Stockhausen kind of stuff. Is like folk abandoned, or is that still a part of your life?
No, I think that's still very much a part of me and what I'm interested in and what I listen to, and maybe most of the time is what I enjoy listening to the most. But I've discovered new things recently, more experimental things, John Cage and Stockhausen. I'm also studying, and Cornelius Cardew, who's a British composer, did the scratch orchestra stuff. And I'm trying to find sort of a happy place between the two. But until that happens right now, I'm like totally far away from folk and doing all of these weird, crazy experimental things. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, Chelsea.
I'm also a last semester Division III at Hampshire College, and I'm working on a series of scores that are text-based and mostly about centered around improvisation, and thinking about improvisational spaces as laboratories. Since last semester I was working at Emory University and in a laboratory in the proteomics core of the Center for Neurodegenerative Disease, and spending a lot of time thinking about the boundaries of the laboratory and like both formal and informal, and the permeability of those boundaries and how they exist in other types of laboratory spaces, and like the, I guess, like lateral translation of those boundaries.
And does music fit into this at all?
Yeah, well, because that's what all my scores are based around, and so for me it's almost like a personal relationship between like how I think about science in the science world and how I think about my place in the world of music and improvisation especially. And so I'm also going to have like a performance in April with my scores, and music is a huge part of my Div 3.
Cool, very cool. And so you're also in Patchwork.
Yes.
Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so Patchwork is an improvisational duo with me on cello and Gabby Fluke-Mogul on violin, and it's very intentional that we're both female identified, and that was something that was a really special connection for us. When I first got to Hampshire, we realized that was the first time that either of us had really played more, I guess, like non-traditional music with other women, and so it was a really important relationship for us, and we spent a lot of time growing with each other around that.
Is there a reason why you don't have vowels in your name?
Yes. It's because Patchwork with an O was already taken on Facebook.
Oh. Okay. The way you answered so quickly, I was like, oh, there's gonna be a really good big explanation.
Yeah,
here.
it's like Weekend. Just kidding.
What?
Isn't that a band or a guy? It spells Weekend without the E at the end.
Oh, maybe, probably.
I think that's a thing.
Like weekend.
Yeah, like week and then ND.
Weekend.
Weekend. Whoa.
I've been weakened.
So anyway, so Patchwork is playing at Ladyfest.
Yes.
Correct. And you are, where do you fit into? Because you're one of the organizers. Where do you fit into that? Right. Are you just like on the committee who organizes it, or do you have like a special role?
Oh, we're just on the committee that organizes it, but I think that we kind of adopted a special role since we performed and helped organize Ladyfest in the past as well. So it was like, especially since me and Gabby were both, well, Gabby doesn't go to Hampshire anymore, and I was gone last semester, and so there were a lot of questions that we were both getting emailed by the current Vibe members about like, how do you organize Ladyfest? Like what are things that are important, and how did you start doing submissions, that kind of thing. So not like a senior role, but I hate that.
But like a
advisory role, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, everyone's pretty equal, and everyone definitely had like an equal voice in organizing, but it was definitely a small group of organizers this year, especially just because of the time crunch in organizing it, like with everyone and who had organized in the past being gone or unavailable last semester. There's we wish we had more time to like get the word out about submissions and things like that, but
so actually maybe we got like ahead of ourselves.
We did, yeah.
If there's like somebody listening who doesn't know what Ladyfest is, can we just like what is Ladyfest?
I mean I can start, sure. I guess Ladyfest on a basic level started in, was it 2000, I think? In Washington State, and basically it's a space for cis women, genderqueer, trans, intersex. I don't know, I feel like I'm missing some, but you get the general idea. People to come together and have a space to collaborate creatively, politically, which is also important. And the first Ladyfest was big, I think, and included workshops, obviously bands, spoken word performance, visual art, and that sort of thing. But since then, Ladyfest has sort of become whatever each individual community that has Ladyfest wants it to be. And I think that's maybe the most important part about it, is that an individual community having Ladyfest can get together and create a space that they feel their community needs.
Okay. So, if somebody wants to start a Ladyfest, do they need to talk to Ladyfest International, or do they need to talk to headquarters, or can they just organize something and say this is Ladyfest?
Organizer?
Well, I guess the way we did it was we just decided it was a Ladyfest, and
okay.
there had in the past been a Ladyfest Northampton. I think it was
really?
5 years ago or something. There was a Ladyfest Northampton, and then that kind of died out. And the Hampshire College Ladyfest is a little bit untraditional in the sense that I think most Ladyfests are organized as kind of like a festival, over a several days, 2 or 3 days, and there's Kelley said, workshops and dialogue and more than just music. But Hampshire's we've kind of turned it into this a little a mini Ladyfest, right, almost. And this year we decided to keep it at just musicians. Last year we had poetry also, but we felt that at Hampshire College we needed an intentional space for female identified music performers, because especially at events like Hampshire Halloween or Spring Jam, it's just all the Hampshire bands that seem to be playing or submitting seem to mostly be cisgendered men. And it felt really important to have a space that was specifically for female identified people who want to play music. And I want to talk about something else, but you might be asking about this later.
Well, I was gonna ask.
Okay.
So what you just said to me is that at Hampshire College in particular, it seems that there's less opportunities for female musicians to perform. And so this year you said, okay, we're only going to have music, no poetry. Does that mean that in some ways maybe there's more opportunities for poets to perform?
No, that's not what I meant by that.
Okay.
It's just that there's a lot of restrictions around just the administrative stuff and organizing Ladyfest, time, space. And so we realized that it was already hard enough for us to find the space for all of the musicians who submitted. And in the past, we would like to see Ladyfest grow into something more like a workshop over several days where we could include all these other visual artists as well, all different types of things. But for this year, we just felt like there were a lot of voices that didn't get to be heard last year, or that the event already goes on for 4 hours, and so we just wanted to include as many Hampshire musicians as possible.
So is it going to be shorter this year?
No, it's still going to be as long, but there's going to be more music, I guess.
Okay. I think I overheard you talking to somebody that it's going to be first of all the performance, then there's a DJ afterwards. Am I making that up?
No, you're not making that up. That was the goal, is to get a DJ for the end to kind of move from Ladyfest into kind of like Red Barn dance party.
Yeah.
And I think we're still working on that. I'm not sure if we've officially gotten a DJ, because none submitted, which was another problem in our submission process this year. But then afterwards, especially once the word started getting out about Ladyfest happening, we got a lot of interest from people who wanted to play, and so we've kind of been scrambling to try to get that together.
And okay, so what's the submission process like?
Well, we asked people to submit their name, recordings, and then the most important piece is why Ladyfest. And we asked bands to talk specifically about why they want to participate in an event like this, why it's important for them to play here, to be here, and to participate. And then we go through all the submissions, listen to every single band, which everyone knows takes a long time.
Yeah.
And then we try to figure out how to represent like a diversity of music, types of music, and types of people who can also represent the community, the Hampshire community.
Do you give, in the selection process, is preference given to performers who maybe haven't performed ever or much?
I would say that's definitely a consideration. Because obviously this is a space for people who haven't been heard in the way they should have been, or like haven't had a space for that before. So we do take that into consideration. But more so with people who we know have played all the time at Hampshire or something like that, as opposed to people who have never played at Hampshire, because it's also important for it to be an event that people come to and are like, wow, look at all these incredible people that I didn't know were doing this stuff at all.
Right.
And so we try to choose people who have like definitely had their stuff together, which is sometimes a problem when like people haven't performed before.
Right.
But it's still like a space where that is another thing that's okay for people to stumble through a first performance or something. Yeah. It's a space for that.
And so Kelley is emceeing.
I am, yeah.
How did that happen?
I really don't know, but I am emceeing.
Okay.
I haven't emceed in a very long time, so it'll be interesting, but no, it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Okay. And I think I've probably seen you at the other Ladyfests before.
I actually have never been to Hampshire's Ladyfest.
Have you been to other ones?
I went to one in Boston once. But that was it. Last year I was in Berlin when Ladyfest happened at Hampshire, and the year before that I remember it happening. It was the first year that Hampshire had Ladyfest, I believe. Yeah. I had lots of friends playing, but very distinctly remember having something else going on. Couldn't make it. So I'm really looking forward actually to having this be my first Hampshire Ladyfest experience too. And not only do I get to be there, but I get to be a part of it somehow, which is really neat.
What was the Boston one like? I mean, I know you don't have anything to compare it to, but knowing that like the Hampshire one is like a 4-hour or so music event.
Yeah.
How does that compare to what you saw in Boston?
In Boston, I was there because I was with someone who was playing music in it, so I pretty much just saw that.
Oh, okay.
That side of it. But I recall there being sort of a program with more things going on.
Okay.
I know Philadelphia has had giant Ladyfest before. There are certain places that tend to have larger outcomes and larger events.
Yeah, like 3-day events with
yeah.
lots of stuff. Yeah. And have you been to different ones, Chelsea?
No, I actually haven't. But I was thinking, do you want me to talk a little more about the organization of this Ladyfest outside of just the event itself?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, because I think that was something that we were unhappy with in the past. Like last year, we tried to have a talk back the next day where people could kind of say like, what they liked about it, what they didn't like, what they felt it was missing, how, or just like a space for dialogue in general about the intentionality of the event. And basically no one showed up. So this year what we've decided to do is we're having a dinner before the event starts with all of the performers to make a space for specifically for the performers to have that dialogue with each other and meet each other, which is a huge problem I feel on the Hampshire campus. It's hard sometimes to meet other musicians because the music and dance building certainly isn't like the home of all the Hampshire musicians. We all know that. But so we're having this dinner and this space for dialogue, and then we're also going to have this big poster roll with markers that says, just ask why Ladyfest for everyone, so that anyone who comes to the event, and especially people performing in the event, can write about for them personally why this event is important and why this event needs to exist on Hampshire's campus, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I think that sounds really interesting to me. Where is it going to be posted? It's just in the Red Barn while you play?
Yeah, I think it's going to be like at the front.
Oh, okay.
Kind of figure that out as we go.
Yeah. So why Ladyfest? What are you going to write?
What am I going to write?
I mean, I guess you don't have to answer that if you don't want to. Is the role going to be anonymous, or can you sign it? Or are you supposed to sign it?
I don't know. I mean, I guess people can sign it if they want to, but I don't think the idea is either one necessarily.
Like
it doesn't have to be anonymous, but sometimes people want people to know who it is. And I think why we did it is because, especially this year, the submissions we got, the Why Ladyfest responses were so great and so wonderful. And I suggested, like, we should post these, we should share this with everyone. But then it's kind of like, well, these people submitted these thinking that only the organizers are going to see, and like, even though these are their words, is it okay to share them like that? So we decided to let everyone have the opportunity to share that in a very visible way at the event, so that that dialogue is happening while people are there and seeing and hearing the performances. I don't know what I'm going to write yet exactly.
Okay.
I have no idea. No.
So what would you say to somebody who was maybe like criticizing Ladyfest and said something like, you want to create inclusion in music scenes. How can you do that by creating an exclusive space? What do you think your response would be like?
Well, I remember that reminds me of someone who asked me, like, oh, if there's a lady fest, why can't there be like a dude fest?
And did you say
my
because
response,
every concert is a dude fest?
Exactly, because every concert. So like my counter to that would be that there's plenty of performance spaces that are already very exclusive, and I don't think that Ladyfest, or especially our Ladyfest, is a very exclusive event. We've got, I mean, there are some male performers, but the whole point of the event is that it's lady-led,
right.
And that's the intention behind it, is to give visibility to people who don't usually get that, and that way it's not, I wouldn't say it's exclusive, any more so than any other event with open submissions is exclusive.
I had another thought about that, and it flew right out the window on that. Well, okay, so do you have any like personal stories? So it's like for me, and I'm assuming for Paul also.
Hi, I haven't spoken yet.
Yeah.
Here too.
like as a man who's like never ever had a problem like entering a performance space or like getting performance opportunities, hearing somebody say like that's not an inclusive space, for me is like, I don't understand, because I've never experienced that before, so it's hard to relate. And I'm assuming that there are other people listening who also have no idea how to relate to that. Maybe you could give an example, like, of a personal story, or talk about like what is it actually like to not be included in a space like a music scene.
Do you have an answer?
I think I gotta form something
That was a good one.
for a second. That was.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of plenty of experiences. It's just like how to frame it in a way.
I mean, it's a big question because you were talking about like a whole culture, and like how do you analyze
Right.
that context or even describe how it feels.
Yeah. I think especially in like the world of improvisation, there's a lot of I guess like it can feel discouraging when you're the only woman at every event you've played for like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that like it's I remember when I was in Atlanta, I played at this event called Invent Room Pop, and it's like a like improvisational space, or they invite 6 musicians and draw names out of a hat, see who plays with each other. But I remember the organizer of that was telling me that they once had they were trying to do an all lady Invent Room Pop, and he had a lot of difficulty finding people to play in that event. And I think that like that in itself shows that it's not, because in my experience there's certainly not a lack of like female identified people who are playing interesting music and doing interesting things, but it's the visibility around that that's really horrendous. And for me, it's like my experiences with that are like being in space, because the whole thing about performance is it's all about visibility. It's all about like people knowing you exist and seeing you there and playing. And when women aren't a part of that, it makes you feel like your identity is invisible in some way, or you become like the token, like, oh, she's like the lady in that metal band, or that's the girl or whatever. Right. And it's like that kind of attitude where you're in these spaces and people see that you're a woman before they see that you're a cello player or something. For me is like I don't know, a huge part of my experience in those things.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with that. I haven't done as much sort of improv performing, I don't think. But years ago, and not so much anymore, when I was more into like folk sort of singing and playing guitar stuff, Greg and I used to hang out in high school and play music together.
We'll make sure we mention it again in a couple minutes.
And yeah, I mean, I would a lot of times it was sort of just me by myself, and I'd show up to play a show, or I would even book lineups myself and show up, and it would be just a bunch of dudes and me. And I had a lot of other female friends who played music, and we would hang out at home and play, but they would never play out. It was sort of this weird thing where I felt like I had this group of ladies who I made music with at home, and then I would go out and perform, and I would just be me by myself, and then amongst all of these like dudes doing similar things. So that it can be daunting. I think personally I tend to sort of get tunnel vision and like only worry about what I'm doing and not think about what anyone else is doing, so that I don't freak out. That's some sort of like internal mechanism that I have. But I definitely think that it's a problem that not so many females get the attention that males get in music, live music especially.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember. Yeah, I think you and I probably did like 4 shows together.
Yeah, I remember.
And not a ton.
Not a lot.
But where I would, I played like snare drum for you. And I remember at least at one show, I can definitely remember somebody saying something like, "Oh, it was really weird seeing like you back her up."
Oh,
something along
wow.
those lines.
Huh.
Which like.
See, no one said that to me.
Yeah, that's also a
you,
thing.
yeah.
And I know, like, you know, in all Dreev's tours, whenever there's a female in one of the other bands, especially, you know, when we're playing like scary basements or whatever, when there's a girl playing, it's always like, I don't even know how to describe what happens, but definitely the crowd has a different attitude. There's a different atmosphere that's created. Yeah, I don't even know how. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, kind of. It's a weird. The feeling I get from what it's a weird mix of like people, you know, men mostly, first realizing, oh, this is a woman performer, and this girl is doing this woman is doing this. Oh, that's different. It's different. And there's this idea like, oh, I don't know if I like this. It's not what I'm used to. It's weird, and for some reason it's weird. And why, I think it's different for every person. Is it a subconscious thing, a conscious thing? Maybe I don't even know. But there's a weird change that happens where there's the command of the room, the person in command, you know, who should be in command of the room. This woman performer is kind of like, it's a different room and it's a different kind of command, and maybe there isn't really a command. It becomes a weird spectacle, like focusing like on the audience being awkward about this happening, rather than a spectacle where this is someone performing and other people just like taking it in.
Yeah.
I think there's, I don't know how to describe it. There's a weird feeling that happens. There's a weird like power thing going on.
Yeah.
It's awkward, and I don't know why. It like, it isn't awkward, but it is. It's different. It's weird.
You definitely always know when you're the only lady who's playing at a whole show.
Definitely.
Especially like I was just thinking also about I played in a metal band for a little bit. Like,
I love seeing those pictures of like the electric cello you had. And
That's
I guess
awesome.
I think there were costumes involved.
Oh, that was our Halloween show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was a wolf. But everyone just thought it was
Wolf
a
on
cat.
cello.
But
We can talk about that too.
but I just remember like at first being really uncomfortable about it, because like I had only played like regular cello, acoustic cello, so I didn't really have a lot of experience like setting up the equipment and doing all that kind of stuff. But then I remember like feeling this like fire to learn really fast, because I was sick of people at every single show being like, do you need help with that? Like, do you need me to hold your cello for you? It's just like, I've been lugging this thing around with me since 6th grade. I know how to fit through doorways and stuff. You don't have to hold the door for me. Like, or like hold my stool while I like get on stage. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's just people didn't have any confidence that I had figured it out. But no one else in my band, like, no one was asking them if they need help setting up their equipment and stuff like that. And I feel like that's an experience a lot of other women I've talked to who play with, especially like more like electronic setups, feel that they get asked all the time by people who aren't even experts or involved in the show, like just are like, oh, do you need help? Do you know how to do that? Like,
and just thinking about like all the different bands we've played with, I feel like every time I see a female in a band, and usually the bands we end up playing with are male dominated, they're always either like relegated to like this like very back position. Like I'm thinking of one band in particular. Well, I don't even know why this girl was in the band, because she clearly could not play the keyboard. But she was just like sitting in the back, and I was like, I don't know, it was just strange to me. But I feel like other times when I've seen bands that have like a front woman, I'm thinking of like Paramore, and like I know like Hayley Williams is like really inspiring for a lot of people, but I also feel like in some ways maybe she's kind of sensationalized for being a front woman, who's like, you know, pretty enigmatic and tends to be a little, and she puts herself out there more. How does that make sense?
yeah, I guess since like most of what I do is like play with Gabby and Patchwork, and then also me and Morgan Cluck have a duo that's still unnamed, but
oh right.
It's just like mostly like those improvisational spaces are like a little, or those like weird shows where people are just like making you listen to sounds that are hard to listen to for like an hour. It's like a little different in that like performance aspect of like, because were you going for like this like woman as like performing for like a showcase of
yeah, maybe,
or like,
I mean, I feel like in some instances
like,
I've seen it read both ways, and I think it's interesting how people turn to that. And I've also found myself like sometimes I'll see a band and like I'll be talking to somebody and I'll find myself saying like, oh yeah, and they had a girl playing this instrument.
Yeah.
And it's like, why am I like referencing that?
That's so
you know?
hard, because sometimes I feel like yeah, but it's also so important sometimes to acknowledge that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The visual, because it's like yes, I'm just a member of the band, but I also am a woman in the band, which another reason why Ladyfest is really important, because then we don't have to do this whole like wow, look, there are women or female identified people or whatever playing this music. It's like a space for that.
Of course
there are.
Exactly. So then we just get to talk about what, like, how awesome what they're doing is, and to like have a space that's intentionally creates that kind of dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely in the past few years have gotten more involved with sort of like computer music, electronic music, also sort of keeping a foot in traditional music theory and that sort of thing, and in looking for female electronic musicians and that sort of thing to sort of I don't know, just listen to their stuff or check out what they're up to. It can be difficult to find that as a resource, and there are some out there, but not nearly as many as there are men. Yeah, I can't think at the moment of anyone that I would name. Yeah.
So I'm curious about how do you feel about how is the Pioneer Valley in terms of inclusivity is the word I just made up, inclusiveness for female performers in your experiences, and also maybe how does it compare to, like, I know you've played a lot in Boston, and also like in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe how do these scenes compare?
I gotta say, I was just talking to you about this after being in Berlin for so long. Coming back to the Hampshire community and to the Pioneer Valley felt very strange to me. Not necessarily in a bad way, I just felt very disconnected from everyone and everything, and even people who I'd kept in touch with.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of felt very weird to sit down and interact with them after being in such a different world for so long. Which, I mean, 6 months isn't really that long, but it seemed like it was a long time.
It's long enough to have
yeah, different language and all of that. But when I was in Berlin, I made it a point to actively go to just as many events as I could, whether that, visual art gallery openings, concerts, all sorts of things of that nature, music festivals, and thinking back on it, I don't remember. I remember one woman whose gallery show I went to. She was a video artist who actually had taught at Hampshire, which was strange in the past. I ended up finding out, but I went to, they have a sort of like a March music festival in Berlin every year. Went to a bunch of stuff on that. That was, I think, a 2-week-long festival, and did not see one lady performer. And attended mostly sort of electronic performances, but there was nothing. And I think coming back from that now, and having been back in the Valley for a little while, it feels nice and right for me to come back and then have this Ladyfest happen. Because I think parallels to Berlin definitely can be drawn to the Valley. Yeah, it was pretty close to, I think, what is here. Obviously, like, Northampton is known for being this, like, lady capital or something weird like that.
Sure.
I forget exactly what its, like, funny official name is.
It was like voted like the number one most
like,
lesbianic city
yeah.
or something like that.
Alright.
Like, it's like population of lesbians to, like, quote unquote other people is like, I don't know, ratio is big or something.
It's a ratio.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
important.
And I definitely feel like there's more of a home for queerness here for me that I think I was missing in Berlin. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just talking.
What about you, Chelsea?
I would say kind of, cause like I was playing a lot in Atlanta, while I was there last semester in the summer, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of funny that like despite the Pioneer Valley kind of being this home for like queerness and definitely like I don't know, I've played with a lot more other lady performers here. There's a similar feel and the dudeness, I guess, of the music scenes in both places, and I feel like the main difference I noticed was that in the Valley, I don't know, and this is like, I mean, I don't know, I've obviously have very limited experiences.
Yeah, I feel like
but it seems like there are more, I see more women who are kind of like in charge here, who are especially like in like organizing like house shows and stuff like that. They're like always like living at the houses and things like that, or like very involved in and maybe that has a lot to do with the fact that I like had a lot more friends here in that scene, whatever. But when I was in Atlanta, it was just like even when I like felt like I found like a home, like found friends who were like all in these awesome bands and I was so into like what they were doing, it was just like they would introduce me to other friends and they'd be like, oh, this is my friend Chelsea, but then like mention nothing about me as a musician or like the fact that I was gonna play at this event like the next day or something like that, where I feel like, I don't know y'all's experiences as musicians, but I feel like that's a thing you do when you introduce musicians to other musicians.
That's totally a thing you do.
And so like that was a huge thing I noticed when I was in Atlanta, is like I feel like no one ever thought of me as a musician. I don't know, and maybe it was just like the group of people that I met, but it was almost like all of the women who I met who were involved in that like group of people or whatever, that friend group, were always like, it was like girlfriends of the band and like friends of the band, but like never also playing, or even if they did play, you know, they would get called up for one song, but they wouldn't be a member of the band ever. And stuff like that, and that's something I do feel is like kind of different in the Valley, although there's definitely, especially like the noise scene, aka dude scene, like it's just overwhelmingly dominated by men, but I think that is like, that's just something you find in a noise scene anywhere.
Sure.
So
if I'm hearing you correctly, based on your experiences, you would say something like the Pioneer Valley like certainly has a long way to go, but maybe you've had better experiences here than elsewhere.
I would definitely say that.
Okay.
And also I think it's like an important difference that like the Pioneer Valley is like in a town of like 5 progressive liberal arts schools,
yeah,
and then Atlanta is like in Georgia, in the South, and so there's, I mean, that's a big part of it, I think, too.
One of the big questions that I have, like, you know, in general about issues like this is, okay, we identified the problem, that like, okay, scenes aren't inclusive. Solutions, like how do we change this? What are steps to take? I mean, we have Ladyfest. What else? What can people do, if anything?
Well, I feel like that's an especially difficult question, because for me, a lot of the problem is has a lot to do with just kind of a historical silencing of women in classrooms, in houses, and workplaces, and like, I mean, it's a big thing to say, but like, I think that it really starts with like an actively anti-sexist movement everywhere to say like, I don't know, to give women back their voices, starting from like really little, because I think that it starts when you're when you're born, pretty much, like as soon as you like go out into the world, and it's hard, because like we were saying, it's not that there's a lack of women who are making music, and like we both have had that experience where we have plenty of other lady friends who are making awesome music, and really great players, but it's the performances, it's the lack of visibility, it's the silencing of women that's the problem.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this actually, I don't know, I didn't think of this before, but it made me think of, since I've been at Hampshire, I've had a radio show at the Yurt that's focused on bringing in local musicians from the Valley to play live and to broadcast that out for, it used to be 2 hours, and now then it was 1 hour, and now it's kind of when I have time with my Div 3 project. But I got a lot of women performers contacting me to come play on the show, saying, you know, none of these other radio stations in the area are answering me back. I can't get any airtime. They won't have me in for an interview. They won't even consider my music. Could I come and share it? And that was a space where I was in charge, and, you know, I could say, of course, yeah, totally, you can. And there are so many amazing female performers in the Valley who I never would have gotten in touch with otherwise, who came and would play live sets, and I would be sitting there sort of like sound engineering but listening and just blown away. It was like private concerts.
Yeah.
All the time. It was a cool deal. I should do it more, really. And word started to spread, and I started getting female performers in from like New York, and had a couple from Boston and Chicago. And that was something that really took off and was really a lot of fun. But I noticed that I think I did have mostly female performers come, and when they would come, they would say, "This was so much fun. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go tell my friends." And I would get all these emails from all these other lady performers saying like, "Hey, I knew this person who was on your radio show. Do you think, you know, I could swing by and do a set?" And it was really cool to create that space, and it sort of happened in an unintentional way. But I think even just starting small like that, and just being aware and helping each other out and supporting each other on like the most basic levels is at least a good place to start.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of something I was reading. It was actually about a similar issue in the scientific community. It was like getting like women scientists to be at like conventions and like big things where they talk and present their work, and like the lack of visibility there. And what they were saying is like one of the biggest things people can do, like especially men who are organizing events, is to be really intentional and to think about like actively trying to have at least one performer on the bill who's female identified and who's whatever. But like that's definitely something that people could do, is like be aware that this is a problem, and be aware that there are plenty of women making interesting music who want to play, and seeking them out.
Yeah, so let them.
I think it's like, you know, it's a really hard question. Like, you were talking about changing a whole culture,
Right.
and
Yeah.
like, it's crazy.
Duh.
It's like and when you think about like just like the way people, I mean, this is taught to them. I mean, it's not even like taught. It's just like culturally understood. And so I think what you said about just like starting like an actual like movement of anti-sexist people, but starting it like with education, and children is, I mean, that's how you change culture, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Start with the babies.
That over the
I guess maybe my last question is something I know I've talked to you a million times about it, and I mentioned this to you, Kelley, and maybe, I don't know, it's something I'm interested in, is like, you know, we want to create inclusive music scenes, but in certain situations, I was telling you, I have no idea how to phrase this question. It's so difficult.
I have no idea how to phrase it either.
We'll just move straight to my hypothetical scenario.
Okay.
Okay. So let's say I'm auditioning like members for an orchestra,
Okay.
or whatever. That like really, you know, they're like, oh, we really want to be like diverse or whatever. And my two candidates are a white man and a woman. And the white man is really, really good at the violin, and maybe the woman actually like isn't that great. But like I want to be diverse. Like, is there a trade-off, or do I say, well, no, like this is the job, and like you are clearly the better candidate for the job?
I hear you. That's a
Yes.
really hard question. But also,
I didn't know how to respond to it earlier.
It's well, another example I have is I was once planning a show, and I won't say where with who, but we had 3 bands on the bill. It was Derive, and 2 other bands who were all it was just all white men, and the person I was playing the show with said, well, like, this is a cool show, but like I'm uncomfortable. I was playing with a white male person also, and this white male person said to me, you know, it's a very like white male heavy show. I'd really love to have like a more diverse kind of band on this. I was like, well, we already booked 3 bands, which you said was the limit, but also, like, can you name to me any bands that like would fit into this show that are diverse? And the answer was no. But then he said, well, I really think we should do this. And like, well, if you can't name anybody, and I was like, I'm not going to put a band on just because that they're diverse. Like, I want them to be good and like make it a good show.
right.
So like, what's the, you know, I mean, is there an answer to that question, or is it
I
just?
think Kelley already answered that, like, by saying that, like, once you create, like, once people know that you're like actively looking for like awesome lady bands who are doing stuff that would fit into the bill or whatever, who are like doing like things you're interested in, like, they start coming out of the like the dark, the blue, I don't know, whatever. Yeah, it's just it's the thing is, like, those bands exist and we all know they have to. And like sometimes it's hard because like no one knows them, but that's exactly the visibility problem. So it's like, I guess my answer would be, maybe you can't find them for that one show, but like,
but in other instances you try. You
put the word out there and you like talk to other people, especially talking to other women who might actually know, you know. And I think I kind of have an answer for about the 2 violinists. Like, you pick the better one.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I would do. Like, I actually don't have an issue with choosing.
But the whole thing is that, like, I guess, like, my point is that there's also, like, maybe they're not coming to you. Is that like there's like plenty of people who are making great music who are female identified and have these certain set of politics or whatever. It's just that it's really hard to like get your name out there and to get that kind of visibility.
Yeah, no, I like that. That was good. everything I probably would have said.
So do you think that Derive, as a band that like runs quite fair number of shows, should we maybe start like posting also like we really want a band that maybe has women or people of color, whatever?
Yeah.
Do you want some suggestions?
Exactly.
Yeah, I just ask around, and it might take a while, but eventually you'll find both someone who will fit your show and
Yeah,
diversify it.
Yeah, if you say that's what you're looking for, people will. If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, that's fair.
Bill.
I guess we have to find.
Because it's a bill. It's a show bill.
Oh. Good one.
Yeah. So, anyway, so yeah, I think that's really good info, and I think we'll start trying to do that more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know there's this band, Reviver, who also don't have vowels in their name. But I know when they tour, I don't know if it's a requirement, this might just be like a misunderstanding about the band, but that they always say to the promoter, like, the opener needs to have either like a woman, a person of color, or a queer identified person. Which I think is really interesting, and has also backfired for them many times, because I think they've got stuck with like really, really shitty bands. But is that okay? Is it worth it to put on a worse show that has a more diverse lineup?
I have an anecdote about this.
Tell it. Let's hear it.
Well, at the rally at Amherst last year, I guess, about rape culture, I remember being really upset because a lot of people were, I don't know, it was like all these people were coming out and speaking up, and it was like a hard thing to talk about anyways, but people were being really negative when people were having a hard time formulating sentences, or like weren't really great presenters, or weren't particularly articulate or anything like that. And I think that being aware that like these particular groups of people who don't get the kind of visibility or opportunities to play out before, it's important to let them be bad for a little bit, and to still just like give them the space, and to understand that like it's like you're not starting from the same place. You like, it's just like all the, like, I guess like you could say white men have a head start and being able to formulate these kind of performances, these performance spaces. So I think it totally is okay to have a few shitty bands who need the visibility and who will get better.
Yeah.
Because
where else are they gonna get that experience? Right?
How was your first show?
And exposure.
And all that goes along with it.
Yeah.
But actually, I mean, that's another, issue that I at least come up in conversations with me, is that actually at a Ladyfest, somebody played, and the person I was with at the concert said, "What did you think?" And I said, "I didn't think it was very good." And that person was like, "Oh, well, I mean, it was the first time." I said, "Yeah, that's fine, but like, you're a performer, so you're still open to certain criticisms." And like you said, like, what was your first show like? My first show sucked. Actually, a lot of my shows have sucked. We still play shitty shows now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I do agree with you that like there should be a certain amount of leeway given, but I also wonder, like, are people still open to the same kind of criticisms? Is that fair, or?
This kind of reminds me of the question you asked earlier in terms of like our submission process, or like how do we pick people, like do we consider things like that, like people's first time, and like that, I mean, that was exactly it. It was like, we know that some people are going to struggle because they've never played in front of anyone, but they like are doing cool things, and we hear something in their recordings where it's like they're finding this really cool thing, and like, yeah, it's okay to be at the show and be like, that sucked, I wasn't into that. It's the same as like you know, there's tons of, especially this year at Ladyfest, there's a ton of different types of things people
Sure.
are doing. And some of it you're going to hate, and some of it you're going to like. Some of it's going to be presented well. Hopefully all of it will be presented well. But you know, like, it's, I mean, yeah, of course the criticism is like important, but it is important to know within that criticism and be aware of like
sure.
the history behind it. So
Sure.
that's what I would say about
Definitely.
it.
Yeah, I mean, like I think Chelsea mentioned before, people and things can't grow and come to fruition unless they're given the opportunity and the space to. And when that's cut off for you, I think it's ridiculous to be expected to like come out and play your first show and have it be amazing and perfect.
Oh, sure.
It's not-
I mean,
it's not
that's not what I meant. That
No,
I
I
expect
know,
like
I know.
really
But
good shows.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
But I also like, you know, think it would be wrong to create like an event where it's like, well, we also can't talk about the actual performance.
Right.
You know, because like also it's my impression of like Ladyfest is that not only do you want to provide a space for people to perform, but you also want to provide a space for them to become good performers. You know.
Sure.
Like
but what
you
says
give them
they
more
aren't
spaces.
already good performers?
Sorry.
What says they aren't already good performers?
Oh, nobody. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, I don't mean that.
Oh, I thought you meant
but
like everyone.
But like, just if there was a bad performance, could
Right.
you
Oh.
say
Right, they
it was
they
bad?
have this space to grow, and like
Oh yeah.
for them to say like, you know, I did this well, but I really didn't do this well.
And now they know.
Right.
Now
Yeah.
they know otherwise.
Exactly. I mean, and I think that's like important in any performance space, but like, especially when you're talking about like people whose identities come out of like a history of oppression, it's like really important to consider that like, yes, you still expect them to like do I don't know, something proficient at least, and like have an idea about like what they're trying to do, but when you do provide criticism, it has to come from a place where you understand how they may struggle with things that you've never had to struggle with,
Mm-hmm.
especially in terms of performing as an act. Like, so I feel like I'm repeating myself now. So
No, I mean,
no, does that make sense?
I think we're all
Yeah.
repeating ourselves, but I think
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of
just so everyone
There's
heard
some
that.
important things going on here. I think it's fair to have some repetition.
yeah. Well, I think if we're repeating ourselves, maybe it's time to wind down. Unless anybody else has anything else.
Should we give like Ladyfest details?
Yeah, we don't know when it is.
Oh,
When it's
yes.
there and
Good call.
Maybe
Yeah.
we should have done that at the beginning. That's fine.
We can use the magic and move it somewhere if we want.
Well, this way
Maybe
people will be
not.
forced to listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
When is
Yeah.
it? Tell me already.
I need to know. Okay, well, it's February 15th, Saturday, at the Red Barn at Hampshire College.
And anybody's
At 8 o'clock.
welcome to come.
Anybody can come.
Okay. Is there a fee?
There is no fee.
Can people bring alcohol?
No, the Red Barn is a sub-free space, I think.
Okay.
Or you're not allowed to have alcohol in the Red Barn.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the answer to that,
Oh.
but
Don't bring
Jeez,
your
Greg, how
40s.
long have you gone to him?
Cool. I think is that all the. What did you say? What time it starts? 8 p.m.
Yeah,
Mhm.
8 p.m. February 15th. Bring your Valentine's Day sadness or
Or your Valentine.
post Valentine's Day.
Perhaps your new Valentine
Ooh.
Whoa.
the day
Yeah.
before.
Or perhaps make a new Valentine. No.
I will be accepting Valentines on that day if anyone wants to make me one.
You'll get a Valentine. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Okay. Cool. I think that's it. Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks.
guys so much.